Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about the deadlift, which happens to be my favorite exercise. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Alright, today we're going to talk a little bit about frequency, intensity, recovery, all of that stuff with the deadlift, because the deadlift is actually probably one of the greatest exercises ever invented, if not the best exercise. And the reason is because it allows you to build so much strength through your entire body. It's a basic movement that actually has real world applications, picking a heavy object up off the ground. That's as simple as it gets. But the reality is, as beneficial as the deadlift is, it is also the single most difficult exercise to recover from. And it's difficult to recover from because it uses an enormous amount of muscle mass in the body. Probably 70 to 80% of the muscles in your body get used. The actual muscle mass that you have has those muscles work. They do work. And because you're using a very heavy weight and you're having to pull it from a dead stop off the ground without any preloading, without any weight being compressed down to store energy in muscles, you're having to instantaneously fire enormous amounts of muscle fibers, more so than you have to in terms of immediate activation of muscle fibers in the first inch of an exercise than you probably do on any other exercise ever. Accordingly, it can beat up your peripheral nervous system, it can beat up your recovery. It's hard on your body. It's a difficult exercise to recover from, even though it is so beneficial. And so that's something that we have to factor in here. Now, as you guys know from stuff I've done over the years on here, I've done everything from to where I deadlift once a week, deadlift once every 2 weeks. I've also done extremely high frequency deadlifting. If you guys recall, I used to pull singles with 85% every single day, and I would do 5 of them. And I actually made a video on that at one time of showing people how to do decently heavy deadlifts every day, 5 or 6 days a week, without overtraining, and how to not beat up your recovery doing it. But I've also tried to pull heavy 3 days a week, heavier than that, meaning working up around RPE 9, which is rate of perceived exertion, along with doing daily accumulation work, which again is kind of like speed work, doing doubles and triples with moderate weight for as fast as you can. For again, high numbers of sets. And I've learned different things about this, particularly as I've gotten older. I'm 40 years old now. I'm on TRT pretty much. I'm not on any hefty dose of anabolics. I'm not running a bunch of gear. And I'm older, and I've had to learn to work around my own recovery as far as doing some of these more exotic and more taxing deadlift methods. And some of the things that I have noticed is that pretty much once you start pulling heavier with a really high rate of perceived exertion, the frequency has to go down. That's just the reality of it. The same thing if you accumulate too much metabolic fatigue, the frequency has to go down. You just simply cannot handle it. You cannot handle it. What I would say, based upon my observations, my training, my working with the deadlift, like one of the things I've noticed, for example, when you're training heavy on the deadlift 3 days a week, you might get away with it 2 weeks in a row. You might get away with it 3 weeks in a row. Like I've come in and done work sets with 500, 515, something in the 495 to 515 range, beltless and everything, for work sets 3 days a week. You know what? I've had times to where I come in and did it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. No problems. In fact, I got a little bit stronger. I noticed progression. I got a little bit better picking up a rep here and there without grinders. You get to that third week, that fourth week, guess what happens? You hit a wall. And it's crazy how fast it happens. Like you've been consistently pulling 500 for reps, and then you come in on a Monday, pull 500 for 5 reps. It feels good. The 5th rep isn't a grinder. You feel good. You know that you had a 6th rep easily that day, right? Come in Wednesday, you can't pull 500 for a single. You do your warm-up, the 405 feels heavy. Feels heavy. You get to 495, it sticks to the floor, and it's kind of like, wait a minute, I just did 500 for 5 reps, didn't go to failure, didn't grind anything, knew I left a rep in the tank 2 days ago, and today I can't get that rep that I left in the tank 2 days ago and should have recovered from. I can't do it one time. I can't break this off the floor. Are you serious? And there's a certain point where your peripheral nervous system gives out. Or the same thing, you'll notice when you're training that way, you start deadlifting heavy on a high frequency, what happens with your grip? Your grip starts to give out. You'll have workouts to where the strength felt fine, the bar came up just fine, but it's slipping out of your fingers and you're going, wait a minute, I do work sets with 500, 515 all the time for reps. Why did the bar slip out of my hands on the second rep on 500? I had chalk. Your peripheral nervous system starts to give out. And that's one of the big things on the deadlift. When you know that your grip strength is strong enough to handle whatever set you're doing, and you fail earlier than normal on your grip and the bar just slips out of your fingers, that's a sign that your peripheral nervous system is overtaxed. And you're going to notice that real fast when you're deadlifting heavy with too high of a frequency. And I found that when I was pulling heavy like that, it would work for short periods of time. When I was doing it 3 times a week, it would work for about 3 weeks straight. And I mean, I would actually get stronger. By that 3rd week, I would be adding reps. Or I would be able to add 10 or 15 pounds to my 3 rep max, my 4 rep max, my 5 rep max, at least training max that you're not pushing to the limits. And you know, before long, 515 feels like 500 for the same number of reps. And then by that 4th week, you just start tuckering out. And that's kind of how you need to look at this. And what I would say to people, if you want to pull heavy multiple days a week, you're only going to be able to do it about 3 weeks. That's my personal experience. And after that, you're going to need an entire deload week. In fact, you might even not be able to pull heavy the week after the deload week. You might have to come in and reduce your weights 20%. After even that deload week, you might have to do 20% less the following week and then build it back up. It's very easy to reach that overreaching and you see a performance improvement and then everything drops. My personal experience, that is how it happens. Accordingly, you see a lot of people, a lot of coaches out there over the years only have people deadlift once a week and sometimes only 1 peak set. Why? Because they feel that the deadlift, you just can't recover from it, and it isn't necessary to train the deadlift all the time to get stronger on the deadlift. What do I mean? You're doing that one heavy set to build some muscle and build the motor skills, right? But you do other exercises, power cleans, pin lay rows, stuff like that. You can build your deadlift with those exercises. If you're doing plenty of pin lay rows, enough volume to get bigger and stronger to grow on off of pin lay rows and power cleans, I promise you your deadlift will increase based on that. All the same muscles are mostly getting used, especially with the power clean thrown in, and it will give you that extra speed strength, but it won't beat your recovery up as much. So one method that people could look at, because it is so difficult to recover when you're pulling heavy more than once a week, that you might only be able to pull heavy once a week and then use all those other exercises, these other accessory movements and pulling exercises to build up your deadlift and build the muscles and the motor patterns involved with it. And that doesn't mean you come and do rack pulls or other stuff. People need to understand those are going to beat you up just as bad, and rack pulls don't carry over as well as you might think to your deadlifts, believe it or not. Not that great of an accessory for the deadlift. Maybe for grip work if you're doing it without straps. Doing block pulls and stuff as grip work, yeah, that has its place. Maybe building your upper back a little. There's just easier ways to do it. You're better off, in my opinion, doing just normal deadlifts if you have the energy to do rack pulls or block pulls. And I know a lot of champions disagree, but I'm just throwing it out there. For you mere mortals out there, you're going to find that to be true. Don't worry about these world level powerlifters who do it differently. You have to understand they're a slightly different breed. The average Joe is going to struggle with that. You're probably better off just doing a deadlift session instead of messing with rack pulls or block pulls. So that's one option. Your other option, if you're going to pull heavy, only pull one other time that week and make it light. Meaning, if you're working with 500, 515, drop it down 20%. Come in and do 3 to 5 rep sets with 405 and leave it at that. And the other thing is, too, even when you're doing that, sometimes you don't need to be pulling to failure. Training to failure on deadlifts is a one-way ticket to overtraining. It doesn't work very well in my experience, either myself or observing others. Your other options is accumulation work, but here's the thing. Accumulation work can do the same thing. You can burn out at the same rate. I messed with that myself, of pulling every day for speed. With an appreciable amount of volume, you burn out within 1 week. If you're doing that 5 days a week, by the end of the second week, you're already reaching the point to where 405 will feel excruciatingly heavy. It's great for short bursts of maybe to push yourself into overreaching. Even that can start to be problematic in my experience. If you're going to do that, you almost need to treat it like a heavy deadlift session. Meaning if you come in, if you can pull 600 pounds, and you want to come do accumulation work with 405, only do it once a week. Meaning accumulation work, you're doing at least 7 sets of 3 and maybe building up, trying to build up to 10 sets of 3 and then increase the weight a little bit to maybe 415 and then work with 7 sets of 3. Accumulating volume with a fairly light weight for triples for speed. It's a great method. You'll get stronger on your deadlift, you'll gain muscle, but that seems to be just as taxing as a heavy deadlift session. So in my experience, your only options if you want to deadlift multiple days a week, particularly if you're not running a boatload of drugs to recover from it, your best options are to have a heavy day or an accumulation day and then a really light day. And when I say a light day, that doesn't mean you come in and you do 5 sets of 10. A light day means that you come in and you work with 20% less weight for the same sort of reps and sets you did before. All right, you can get away with that, and it works. It will actually enhance your deadlift quite a bit. Your other option is to pull with submaximal singles. Again, something I demonstrated for you guys, and I did it for like 5 weeks straight. Didn't overreach from it. My deadlift improved from it. Again, that means come in and work with 85% of your max. If you can deadlift 500 pounds, 85% of that, let me grab my calculator so that I don't get this wrong. People will mess with me on this sort of thing. Windows update trying to go here. Sorry, iPhone update. All right, so 500 times 85 means 425. Wow, that's pretty low. It's 425 for singles. Do 3 to 5 singles with that. Rest at least 2 to 3 minutes between those. None of those should be grinders. 85% of your max for 1 rep is extremely easy, even if you do it multiple times, even if you do it every day. That is a method you can get away with and do high frequency deadlifting without having problems. Or you can work with accumulation style work, but you can't come in and do a bunch of it in one day. Maybe 2 or 3 sets of 3 instead of 7 to 10 sets of 3. So again, same thing. You normally would work with something about 20% less than you would do your normal work sets with. So those are really, in my experience, your only option for people who want to do a lot of deadlift frequency. And you know what? It works. It works really well to do it that way. But by that same token, there are also plenty of world-class level deadlifters, top-level strength athletes who only deadlift once a week. Some of them only once every 2 weeks. They do it heavy when they do deadlift, and then they use these other accessory pulling movements to build up all the musculature and strength that carries over to their deadlift. So that's also another option. But the whole thing to remember is that overtraining, recovery, all of these problems can really mount up and become a problem when you're trying to deadlift. It is probably the single most beneficial exercise ever invented, but it's also an exercise that can pretty much bury you if you overdo it. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.